Hello, I'm David Bowman, the tutoring coordinator for BCSCR, a project of the Three Rivers Education Foundation. We're going to look at the issue of oral language development in this video. When I ask people, what is oral language development? Or when I ask them, how do you go about helping students to develop their oral language skills? I get a very wide variety of answers. So we're going to look at what do we mean when we say oral language development and what do we know about effective instruction in oral language skills. So let's start with the broad definition. What do we mean when we say oral language development? What we mean is oral language skills are an understanding of how language is used in a specific event, setting, context, or culture. And as it turns out, oral language skills are not just a single skill. Instead, they're really a combination of a variety of skills. Vocabulary, syntax, morphological skills, what we call pragmatics, and phonological skills. Now, regarding oral language development, when we talk about vocabulary, we're really looking at a variety of spectra. We're looking at from idiomatic language, which is in this place and in this time, this word means this thing, to more universal word use, or more universal vocabulary, which is in the general society, in the general population, here's what people mean when they use this word, or here's how they generally define this particular word. We're also looking at the spectrum from denotative meanings, in the dictionary, this is the definition, to more connotative meanings, which is here's what these words imply. This is the more nuanced language. The word may have a specific definition, but here's how people interpret this word when they hear it or when they read it. So we're looking at those spectra around vocabulary use, from individual denotative all the way through universal and connotative language use. When we talk about syntax, at its core, what we're talking about is the grammar of the language. How do you put words together in order to make complete sentences, grammatically correct sentences? So we're kind of talking about the rules of language use. What are the rules for how language should be spoken in order to create correct language use? With morphological skills, this in great part is the analysis piece. How do the word parts interact? The prefixes, the suffixes, and infixes in order to create meaning. And how do words themselves interact in order to establish a meaning? So I know this is a bit conceptual, so let me give you an example. Let's say that I tell you I can only talk about my car, which means I can't talk about anything else except my car. I can only talk about my car. On the other hand, I could say only I could talk about my car, meaning nobody but me is allowed to talk about my car. Only I can talk about my car. So by changing the word order and the way the words interact, we actually change the meaning. And that is the realm of morphological skills, how the parts and the words interact to create meaning. The next skill set is pragmatics. In a sense, it's how you get something done with the language. You have a purpose to accomplish, or the author has a purpose to accomplish. Was it done effectively? Was the language used effectively to accomplish that purpose? And on the flip side of that, is the language use appropriate? Is it the appropriate way to say things or to write things according to the event, context, culture, and so forth? In great sense, it's kind of a challenging area, but it is in many ways one of the most critical areas because language has a purpose. It's to communicate ideas and to get something done. So a study of the effectiveness of an author's language or the appropriateness of that language is what we're talking about when we say pragmatics. Now, each of those areas, those first four areas, really, the learning in those areas continues throughout a person's life. With phonological skills, however, this is something we're generally dealing with in children's earliest years through mid potentially upper elementary school years. Because with phonological skills, we're really looking at being able to identify and make meaning from individual word sounds. We're talking about the sounds of the words here, not so much how the words interact and their appropriateness and all those other things, but can you identify the sounds? And from there, then we can go to the analysis piece and talk about, all right, how do those sounds interact? And then we get to prefixes and suffixes and emphasis and things like that. So, as we see, oral language skills are really a lot of different skill sets that combine together. And with that understanding, then, we have a lot of clues about how we can help students to improve their oral language skills, because we know that there are specific things that we're trying to accomplish, and we can engage in strategies to help them build up each of those sub areas. So, with instruction, what do we know about effective instruction? As it turns out, there are 5 major categories of instructional strategies. The first of which is modeling, and this truly is your primary responsibility as a tutor, to make sure that you are modeling appropriate, effective language use. See, when children are born, they hear a lot of sounds around them, and they make a lot of sounds, and they get exposed to how language is being used in that particular environment, and they gain a familiarity with it. And from that familiarity and from practice, they then gain the ability to use language. Which means that as a tutor, you need to make sure that you are giving students exposure to a wide variety of language use. And in particular, considering this as an academic environment that we're talking about, you need to give students exposure to academic language use, which is, in great part, the ability to speak correctly, using standard grammar, complete sentences, and so forth, so that students begin to develop a familiarity with the correct and appropriate use of language within an academic setting. The next set of strategies are the analysis strategies. Word analysis, what are the different parts of the words, prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and so forth. Text analysis, which is how is the author using language, or how are characters using language, and along with that, the analysis of the message. What is the author's intent? What is the author intending to do? What is the purpose of the text, and what is the message that is being conveyed? This then leads us to practice and correction. See, practice is one set of strategies, giving students a chance to practice expressing their ideas, but also to match that with correction. No, that's not how we say that. Try it this way instead. So some ways that we go about that, we can actually teach students very specific language patterns. If a student points at the door and says bathroom, you can say no. How you say that is, may I go to the bathroom? All right, repeat it to me. May I go to the bathroom? All right, we can teach specific language patterns. And along with that, any type of guided oral reading activity is very effective for providing students the opportunity to practice and then to correct their language use and have a chance to practice it again. Because we always want to give students the chance to practice using language correctly so that they begin to develop those language patterns that they need. Choral reading is also very effective for this, as is any type of dramatic reading, and certainly any type of revising or rewording. Okay, the author said it this way, what's another way to say that? The character said these things, what's another way to say that? Okay, so all of that gives us that practice and correction. But those all lead up to what is the most powerful strategy for helping students to develop their oral language skills, and that's discussion. And not just random discussion, but very specific guided instruction that allows students to answer and ask questions that reflect higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. They're increasingly sophisticated questions and answers. Or if you're using depth of knowledge, that really helps students, that allows students to use the various realms within depth of knowledge. In terms of oral language skills, though, those discussions are around language use. How is the author using language? How is the character using language? Then we can talk about the effectiveness and the intent and the purpose and the appropriateness and all those other things that we just discussed. The discussion activities give us just a fantastic opportunity to do all of those other strategies. So it truly is the most powerful of all the strategies for helping students to develop their oral language skills. Now, with all that said, what doesn't work? Certainly any type of sustained silent reading activities. Much like with comprehension, sustained silent reading might help to solidify existing skills, but it does not lead to an increase in those skills. So those are off the table. And certainly for a tutoring environment, you've got an opportunity to provide direct instruction and direct interaction with students, and you miss those opportunities if you have students doing sustained silent reading. Similarly, any type of worksheet activities or any type of individual work also does not help students to develop their oral language skills. So you can see that based on what we know about oral language and the strategies, there are some other areas, other reading components that are very appropriate to teach in conjunction with oral language skills. You've probably heard me say it before, but we know that effective instruction in reading is most effective when we are combining instruction in various reading components as opposed to addressing them or trying to address them one at a time. So with oral language skills, we're certainly going to be teaching it in conjunction with phonemic awareness skills. We're going to be teaching it in conjunction with vocabulary, with fluency, and certainly along with comprehension. Really, the last thing I want to say is this. Helping students to develop their oral language skills is a huge task because it really is one of the most important and broadest skill sets of all the reading components that we address with BCSCR tutoring. So you've got a big job ahead of you to help students do this, and I know that it can be very challenging to do this and to kind of think through what activities am I going to use and how am I going to integrate the various reading components together. So for that, I truly want to say thank you very much. You really are making a difference in children's lives, not just in their ability to read better, but in the way that they perceive themselves as learners and the long-term benefits that they gain from the instruction that you provide. So thank you very much for being a BCSCR tutor. Again, I'm David Bowman with BCSCR. Have a great day.